Alrighty, it's 4:01, and as with all my classes, I like to start on time. So, we're gonna get started. I just want to let you know that your cameras are off and the mute and you're on mute and all that stuff because I am recording this to send out for replay. That's the way I know how to do it, so that's the way it's going to be. At the end, I can unmute you, or if you have any questions as I go along, just type them in the chat and I will get to those at the end. So, everybody, thank you for coming. I'm so excited to be able to share with you the origin story for this thing, practice with purpose. My book, which I'm so delighted to share with you. It's been a long time coming, and I'm just going to give you a little story about sort of my background and why it is that I wrote this book and what I hope it's going to accomplish. Please forgive any glitches in technology. I am doing my best. Let's see. I'm going to share my screen with you. Oh, that's going away. And let's get started. So, this is the virtual book launch, yay, for Practice with Purpose. And I really look forward to sharing everything with you. But more than anything, just thank you for being here. I really appreciate you taking the time to listen to how this book came into being. And like I said, I'll be happy to answer any questions that you're going to have in the end. So for those of you, most of you who know me as a yoga teacher, which I have been for the last 25 years. And I've been training teachers for more than 15 of those years. But even before I found my way to the mat, I was a reader and a writer, both for pleasure and for pay. And I finally found a way to bring the things that I love together all at once. So let's get into the story of how that happened. There we go. Alrighty, yes, that's me at a tender young age. And when I was at that age, I moved my body a lot. When I was a kid, I was in gymnastics, I was in ballet, jazz, rollers. I roller skated a ton. I was skiing from the time that I could walk. And of course, in the neighborhood, I was always on someone's lawn playing a game of Red Rover. I was cute and quick and bendy, but I was not strong or stable, which is likely why my mother would watch my gymnastics competitions kind of like this, for a really good reason. I was also a wannabe thespian. It was all I ever wanted to do growing up was get the spotlight on stage. I was a book addict and I was always carrying around notebooks where I would write poetry and short stories. And I took that love into academia and I earned my BA and my MA in literature. I was writing for a magazine and working in a bookstore, and I eventually started my own business in writing and editing and communications about 10 years before I kind of fell into yoga. And yes, I wrote everything. I wrote press releases and press kits. I did a lot in the PR business. I wrote annual reports and quarterly reports and magazine articles and websites. And yes, I even did write a couple of obituaries and a wedding speech for someone. I'm not allowed to say who. I even wrote copy on the side of packages. I named cookies and things like that. So anything anybody needed writing, I wrote. I was pretty happy. I was creative. I was productive, but there was also something else going on inside me. And that was a whole bunch of anxiety, and the kind of anxiety that sort of outpaced the rest of the great things in my life. It probably began in teenagehood and it got worse in waves. And as a matter of fact, I remember that before I got married, which was a great thing to happen, I spent months in what was a relaxation clinic doing group therapy and mindful breath work because I really had to learn how to calm my nervous system. I had my first really bad panic attack at 40,000 feet. I was flying to a conference in Europe and I wound out up at the clinic in a Geneva airport with like electrodes attached to my chest, trying to figure out if I had had a heart attack, et cetera, et cetera. It was an awful experience. But it certainly did give me a clue that there was something up more than just regular anxiety or feeling anxious. I was diagnosed with a generalized anxiety disorder just after I had my second child, Miranda. And I had more than one absolutely wretched encounter with panic and the depression that followed because after you have a panic attack, for those of you who have suffered, it very often feels like that lack of control is going to define your life. And that's something really difficult to bring your mind or to get your mind around until things really level off and you realize that was just something that happened. It's not necessarily who you are. But at that time in my life, I was very reactive and I was certainly unhappy with how I was coping. I was definitely a slave to my thoughts and my emotions. By then, I had two kids, and that's Daniel and Miranda. And I definitely wanted to be a better mother for my kids. I wanted to be a better wife for my husband, and I wanted to be a better me for the world. I found the right medication, I found the right therapist. I don't want to say I wasn't doing other things, I was, but more than anything, I found yoga. I went from kind of being on the mat every once in a while to going to the same studio with the same teacher doing the same practice 4 times a week. And it was only after I had a couple of months of that really regular practice, again, same time every 3 mornings a week, and then on Saturday mornings, and something really shifted in me. Of course, they say that for anxiety or depression, regular exercise is incredibly therapeutic. The endorphins go on and the mind chatter goes off. But there was something more to the practice of yoga, which was a very deliberate and thoughtful practice. And I really just felt beautiful for the first time. I found myself at home, once again, at home in my body for the first time since I was, running around as a kid playing Red Rover and putting on shows for the parents and things like that. On my mat, on this tiny little sticky mat, I found myself again. I felt more grounded, I felt more stable, but more than anything, I was less reactive, I was less judgmental, and I was able to be more fully present. And of course, being the curious student that I am, I wanted to find out why. I wanted to learn more. So I entered a teacher training program and I completed that primary certification in 2002. And although I had a career in editing and writing and PR and marketing at the time, I discovered that I absolutely loved teaching and that it really did bring together a whole bunch of my interests, the movement interest, the performance part, because that's what teachers do. We stand in front of a couple of people and we actually perform. We also take the time to think about the philosophy and think about the movement and process it a bit and present it to other people. Again, part of the performance element. And for me, teaching became a real service. I saw the kind of difference that it made in other people's lives. And when I was really involved in helping other people, there was less navel gazing. I didn't have to obsess with what was going on in me. And I just felt a lot more stable and a lot more grounded. I went on to receive my second certification in Anusara Yoga. Now it's called the Anusara School of Hatha Yoga. And that really allowed me to lead teacher trainings in accordance with Yoga Alliance standards. And then I had an idea for a book. Um, about 5 years ago, I'd say. And there's a number of reasons why it seemed to me to be a great idea. First of all, there were a lot of students that I encountered who wanted a deeper dive into yoga philosophy and understanding asana and understanding the anatomy, all the questions that I would answer after class. But they didn't necessarily want the full commitment of a 200-hour YTT, yoga teacher training. I also encountered a lot of yoga teaching grads who had really obvious knowledge gaps around what I would call critical concepts and skills that I wanted to help and skills. And I wanted to really raise the bar on teacher training And I wanted to allow students to fill in those gaps in their knowledge so that they would feel a couple of steps ahead of the people that they were teaching. And the third reason is I found very few books that could kind of tick all the boxes. So my students would ask me, if I could recommend a book, and I would say sure. And there were certain books that I would recommend on philosophy, and there were certain books that I would recommend on anatomy, and there were certain books that I would recommend on asana. There were precious few at the time that I would have recommended in terms of teaching skills, but for people who were really curious about a whole bunch of things, there wasn't a lot that was available that would get to all those topics in good time. So step by step, I gathered notes from hundreds of hours of studying that I had done and workshops that I had taken. And I also brought together probably about 10 years of outlines and handouts that I had written for teacher trainings, and also materials that I had developed because I was mentoring students who wanted to really get their training up to standard. I leaned heavily on my experiences at Inya Yoga in Oakville, Ontario, which is where I still teach teachers. There are Eddie at Inya, Eddie Huang has a remarkable studio there, and my other faculty members, Ellie Emberley, who teaches anatomy, and Hallie Schwartz, who teaches philosophy. A huge shout out to them because they are absolutely brilliant at what they do. And they really have supported me in my learning and ensuring that I feel like I could offer something quite comprehensive and holistic to readers who open up this book. I've been working in earnest on the book, on the content for the last 2 years. And in trying to put it together, I quickly realized that there were a lot of things that I was ill-equipped to do. One of them was to do the illustrations, and I found Emily Cheng, who did the illustrations for the book that are absolutely beautiful. She also did the book cover. She has her undergraduate degree, no, her graduate degree in anatomical illustration. So yes, she knows what she's doing. And I found David Borink, who has been absolutely brilliant on the production side of things, so quick to help me turn around the content into something that is a beautiful product. And I hope that if you're going to get the book, you'll appreciate the two of them as much as I have. So I want to take the next little while just to tell you a little bit about what's inside Practice with Purpose, because I'm so proud of it. And I think, again, it leans really heavily on everything that I have built over the last 25 years in terms of my studies and also in terms of what I've been teaching my students. So there are 4 sections: history, philosophy. History and philosophy is the first section, anatomy for yoga is the second, asana analysis the third, and teaching skills finally. So I'm just going to break everything down one at a time. The first section, history and philosophy, here's one of Emily's brilliant drawings. In history and philosophy, I go through the incredibly interesting discussion of what is yoga, because most people have a different answer for that question. So we talk about classical definitions and different definitions of various teachers. And then there is a chronological breakdown of the progression of the evolution of yoga philosophy, starting with the Vedic period, the pre-classical period, and the Epic Age. The Epic Age is where you would find the Bhagavad Gita, which is one of the seminal texts of the tradition, the classical era, and the Yoga Sutra, which was the first codification of yoga. And that 8-stepped or 8-limbed path towards self-awareness is scientific in nature. It is scientific, almost examination of consciousness. It's very experiential. It is not a religious text. And it is the foundation upon which all other practices of yoga evolved. Then there's the post-classical traditions, Tantra, Hatha, the chakras, where we describe the subtle energy structures of the human being and all the practices that can support the container that carries around your spirit and the power of that spirit itself. I go on in the book to talk about modern yoga and the postural practice that has been enriched and sometimes really exploited today. I also talk about meditation and breath work and give you a brief glance at Ayurveda. You've probably heard of Chinese medicine, modern Western medicine. This is the Indian branch of medicine. And throughout that first section, there's lots of journaling prompts and takeaways. So everything that you read remains a really living and dynamic journey. Because it should be. There is real relevance in these concepts. They don't just live in history, they actually live in us today. So, my take on this, the reason why I felt it was so important to include history and philosophy, is that the seeds of yoga really are ancient. We do hear people say, well, yoga is 3,000 years old, but no, people were not on their mats doing poses called Wild Thing and Fallen Angel and I don't know, flamingo, which we do now. But those ancient seeds took root in South Asia, and the concepts really are universally relevant today. I think that we should be incredibly respectful of the tradition. I also understand that yoga continues to evolve and that it can have a very fundamental, critical, positive impact on the quality of your everyday life. But if you do understand some of the historical context, it gets even richer as you study. The concepts in yoga philosophy and those epic writings, they give you an amazing lens through which to see yourself. It's, as I said, not a religious lens, but when you put on that lens of, say, I don't know, let's look at myself through the chakras and what does that mean for me? It gives you a phenomenal new way of looking at yourself, and that is ultimately what we're trying to do through the yoga practice, is to build greater self-awareness. In the original text, in the Yoga Sutra or Yoga Darshan, there are 8 limbs of yoga, and the third limb or 8 steps along the path, 8 rungs on the ladder, if you will. The third limb is the only one that refers to posture or asana, and asana is actually translated directly as seat or posture, but it was seat because what Patanjali meant with asana was just that cross-legged seated position. There are 7 other limbs that have to do with how you treat others and how you treat yourself and how you pull away from your senses, which can really fool you into thinking all you have to do is chase after what you love or run away from what you hate and lead you to a really reactive life. One of the steps on that path is, how do I pull away from that reactivity, and et cetera, et cetera. In today's 60-minute classes, you rarely get a glimpse of some of the other practices that are so integral to the yoga practice. I really believe that the contemporary yoga practice, Hatha Yoga, uses the body and the breath to prime your parasympathetic response. What does that mean? Sympathetic is fight or flight. Parasympathetic is rest and digest. If you can stay more in your rest or digest pattern, the changeable nature of the mind gets eased. And when the mind is calm, you just gain a better understanding of yourself and who you are. You're not the roles that you play. You're not the shoulds. You're not the coulds, and you're not the won'ts. When you remember to commune with what is best about yourself and an essential part of yourself, you can find greater contentment, and you can actually have a positive impact on yourself and on the lives of others. I was just having a conversation recently with my sister and her friend about the practices of meditation, which is one of the steps on the path. It isn't easy, but in our world where there's constant overstimulation, where there's constant information bombarding us, it's not going to be easy. And that's why they call it a practice. And that's where yoga comes into play. It really will help you to find your way through the modern day chaos. So onwards to section number 2, which is anatomy for yoga. I go in this section through the systems of the human body, including the nervous, circulatory, and respiratory systems, which are very important to the practice of yoga. We talk about the tissues of the body, the movements of the body, all the bones and muscles of the body from the feet up, because most Yoga poses are established, all yoga poses are established really from the foundation up. Throughout this section of the book, there is something that I call movement mapping, along with some takeaways. And it's really so that you can absorb the information, not just as something theoretical, but you can actually embody it and move it inside you, understand it better inside you. Ultimately, I really believe that yoga can help you improve your performance in anything else that you do. First of all, physically, so in any sports game, so pickleball or tennis or skiing or basketball or whatever it is, or lifting weights, whatever it is that you choose to do, you will have a better understanding about why it is that yoga can help you from that anatomical point of view. You'll also understand why it can help you focus better. It can give you better perception of yourself and of the team that you are working with. Ultimately, it will improve your performance. I think one of the reasons that I wanted to include this is to really give people the understanding that yoga uses the body as a primary tool to cleanse and to focus. That is pretty much what all forms of hatha yoga do, whether you are doing a quick movement practice like vinyasa or a more sustained practice like Iyengar yoga. I think the physical body, which we can see and feel and manipulate, that's where we actually begin our journey to the self. Put your feet here, turn your gaze there, breathe this way. These are the first cues that start us down a path of bypassing that thinking and reactive mind. When we move consciously and in accordance with the breath, it literally slows us down and it makes us present and it gives us the opportunity to turn off all the other mind chatter and tune in. This is what the physical practice of yoga will do for us. And that's one of the reasons why I spend so much time not just examining the anatomy itself, but what is the anatomy involved in particular postures throughout the section. Finally, I'm a total anatomy geek. And I truly, truly believe that the human body is absolutely miraculous. It is simple and complex. It is resilient and elegant. And I think that if one of the things I wanted to do here was inject a little bit of wonder into the study of anatomy, because I really think that it can lead you into a much deeper appreciation for human architecture, so that as you age and as you change and as life changes around you, you're going to really want to respect and care for this amazing container that is carrying you through your life. Asana analysis is the third section, and you can see here on the screen what the drawings look like. I wanted something that was specific enough to the pose, but hopefully wouldn't be so intimidating that you wouldn't get caught up in having to be in a quote unquote perfect posture, because there's no such thing as a perfect posture when you are practicing. So through this section, we have standing poses, kneeling poses, all the various types of different poses. And at the end, some supine poses and sun salutations. Each pose, you'll see the English and the phonetic Sanskrit names, so the transliteration of those names. Basic drawings like this one. Each pose has all the cues that will take you into and out of the pose. It gives general information about the pose. I also discuss common misalignments, because very often when people are practicing on their own, or lots of people practice online now, they want to have a better understanding about how to put themselves in proper alignment. That's not always available unless you're one-on-one with a teacher. And then I discuss props and variations that can make the pose a little bit more remedial, or can even make it a little bit more difficult, and where you can work to from there. There's also a few practice sequences, mostly there to clarify relationships between poses. So in this pose here, for those of you who practice yoga, you know that this is Warrior 3, but you can do the exact same pose on your back. So if you imagine the floor at this person's back, they have one leg in the air. Same pose, very different feeling because of the different pressure coming through the joints. So those are the kinds of things that I introduce in the practices. So you really understand the relationship between the poses as you move through, which allows you to prepare for more complex poses. So asana, I hope will be seen as something that any body can do. Of course, it's going to look different for different bodies. Um, Whoops. This is me being technologically fluid. Whoops. Stick with me, everybody. Anatomy for yoga and some red marks across the screen. Super. Okay. There we are. Okay. In yoga practice, postures are not separate from the ideology that fuels the practice. Now, that's not something we say about any other form of movement. I get lots of discussion about how is it different from, say, Pilates. Well, it is very different from Pilates because there is an entire philosophical body that informs the postures. The postures in this book may be considered basic. Nevertheless, some are challenging. And one of the things I think we start to understand on the mat, which is something that we should take off the mat, is that how you face challenge on the mat is how you might face the discomforts in life. When we practice on the mat to succeed, we will be more successful off the mat. So what do I mean by this? What do you do when you approach I don't know, a hand balance that's intimidating, or a pose you've never done before? What do you do when you're a little bit uncomfortable, say in Hanumanasana or moving towards the splits? Well, if it's your MO to say, forget it, I'm out of here, to roll up your mat and leave, well, that's not such a good thing to practice in life. This is an amazing way to understand that you can be a little uncomfortable and it's not going to kill you. You're going to be okay. And finally, with regards to asana, I really believe that so many of us just occupy our bodies. We don't really live in our bodies. And asana, because it can be done very slowly according to what your needs are on any given day, that you are ultimately the author of whatever shape you put yourself in, it brings you into a better relationship with your body. And how you experience your body is definitely going to have an impact on your mood and your spirit. Now, the final section of the book is teaching skills. And I know I'm going to lose a lot of people on this one, but for those of you who are either thinking of using this for a textbook because your studio has a teacher training program, or you're teaching your own teacher training program, or you're considering going into a teacher training program, this section will be hopefully quite educational for you. I talk about the qualities that we need to cultivate in teaching and in service. I talk about class planning and give you templates and strategies for that. I talk about recommendations for cueing, demonstrations, effective language and voice. I discuss boundaries and ethics, self-practice and self-care, and what the various teachings opportunities are for teachers and how to market those. It is not a comprehensive marketing book, but it definitely does give you some really valuable ideas around how to think outside the box. It's not just teaching in a studio and earning your flat fee that's going to make your career sustainable. There are specific skills that will enable yoga teachers to overcome all the self-doubt that they have when they graduate. And there are ways to plan time effectively to communicate better with your students and to really become the teacher that you want to be. And that's what this section of the book is dedicated to. It has been my belief ever since I started teaching that it is just a profound honor, that I am in service to my students, that when I take the seat of the teacher, it is never, ever about me. It is always about enabling other people to feel empowered and to live fully and to live purposefully. And that's what I've gotten from teaching, which I guess is selfish, but really it's a selfish gesture that is by being unselfish towards other people. And that's what the service of teaching is really all about. And the last thing I included in the book, there's a student's code of ethical conduct and a teacher's code of ethical conduct. There's also recommended reading and resources for anybody who's interested in delving more deeply into a variety of topics. And at the back of the book, I also give a short glossary of Sanskrit terms because I know when I was studying, it would have been really helpful to have that. And that's Practice with Purpose. I love yoga. I love writing. I love the yoga tradition. I love the yoga. I love being in yoga community. And I especially love making that tradition relevant to today's students. And I hope that Practice with Purpose is going to invite you to deepen your understanding of the concepts and the postures, and that it'll encourage you to go deep, to investigate more thoroughly. What you may only touch upon in a 60-minute class is just the tip of the iceberg. So whether you're a student or a teacher, I really hope that this book is going to support you, not just in your yoga practice, but it'll help you understand how your yoga practice can help you live a more purposeful life on the daily. So that's my spiel on the book. Tomorrow you are going to receive an email from me, and in it you'll find the replay to the book launch event. There will also be a link to purchase Practice with Purpose on Amazon. Once you purchase, just email me your address. I'll send you a book plate. The little design is up there. I'm going to send you a book plate with a handwritten and personalized message signed, and you can just stick that in the book when it comes. And those of you who registered, if you are interested in private instruction or in joining my mentorship program, there will be exclusive pricing for anybody who signed up for this book launch. So my favor to you is this: if you're interested, we'll try to make a splash on Amazon on June 1st. There's certainly no obligation, but please consider, if you purchase on June 1st, a critical number of books purchased, I have no idea how many that is, I'm just hoping, will bump me up on the visibility scale. And a spike in sales will just help boost that visibility. So if you are inclined to buy, please, June 1st, 2026 can be your shopping day. And I hope that has answered at least some questions about the book. If you have any other questions and you want to ask them, I can encourage you to do so technologically. I'm going to try at least. You can either unmute yourself, or better yet, if you want to type them in the chat, that's great. I can let you know a little bit more if I've left something out and you want to know more. And if not, totally great. I'm really excited that this book is hopefully going to make a dent in the yoga community, and just raise the level of expectations in terms of what everyday yogis, everyday practitioners can learn. So that's all. Thanks everybody for coming. I really appreciate it. And again, if you have any questions, I'm easy to find. Just reach out and we'll take care of you. Bye.